The gongs and drums were so loud they rattled the teeth in my skull. Red silk festooned every beam and pillar of the Marquis Zhenyuan's manor, turning the place I'd called home for 5 years into a stranger's wedding feast. I stood behind the great Reborn screen in the main hall, my fingernails digging crescents into my palms, and watched my husband, Xie Cong, lead the bride by the hand across the threshold. His ceremonial robes were black as coffin lacquer, embroidered with golden cranes that caught the torchlight with every step he took. The woman beside him was a blur of crimson and jade, her head bowed in that practiced, demure way that made her look like a willow branch in spring rain. Her hand rested in his as though it had always belonged there, as though the past 5 years of my marriage had been nothing but a placeholder for her arrival. I remembered this day. I remembered every detail of it, because I had lived it once before. The ache in my chest, the burning behind my eyes, the way my voice had cracked when I'd stepped out from behind that very screen and demanded, in front of every guest and servant, to know why my husband had brought a concubine into our home on our wedding anniversary. I'd wept. I'd shrieked. I'd thrown my favorite jade hairpin at his feet and watched it shatter, and all he'd done was look at me with that cold, distant pity and say, "Madam, show some dignity." That was the first life. This was the second. I pressed my forehead against the CL wood of the screen and let the noise wash over me. The guests laughed and toasted. The matchmaker bellowed out auspicious verses. Somewhere, a child was crying, and the kitchen servants were already clattering trays of celebratory red eggs and candied lotus seeds. It was a perfect, beautiful wedding, and I was the ghost haunting its edges. No. Not a ghost. Not anymore. I stepped out from behind the screen. The moment my slippers touched the polished floor of the main hall, the noise faltered. Heads turned. Whispers rippled out like stones dropped into still water. I felt every gaze on my face, on my plain pale green gown, on my unadorned hair. I had not dressed for a celebration. I had dressed for a funeral, and everyone in that hall knew whose. Xie Cong turned. His brows drew together in that familiar, impatient frown he always wore when I interrupted his affairs. "Madam," he said, and his voice ride just enough edge to remind me of my place. "I thought you were unwell." He'd told me to stay in my courtier road. He'd sent his steward with a polite, cold message that morning, "Today will be busy. Madam need not attend." In my first life, I'd ignored that message and come anyway, full of desperate, foolish hope that if he saw me, if he remembered our own wedding day, he might change his mind. He had not changed his mind. He had sent me back to my courtier with a public rebuke that had stripped the last shreds of my dignity. This time, I smiled. Just a small, tired curve of my lips, the kind a sick woman might manage. "I am unwell, my lord," I said, and my voice came out soft and steady, with no tremor at all. "I came only to offer my congratulations and to beg your leave to retire." The woman beside him looked up. Zhenyuan. She had the face of a painted immortal, pale and delicate, with eyes that seemed perpetually wet, as though she'd just been crying from joy. She clutched Xie Cong's arm and gave me a look of wide-eyed, innocent alarm, the way a fawn might look at a wolf. "Sister," she breathed, and her voice was honey and milk. "Sister, please don't be angry. I never meant to." "There is nothing to forgive," I cut her off gently. "My lord has chosen well. You are lovely, and I am sure you will make him very happy." The hall went absolutely silent. I let my gaze travel over the gathered faces. There was the general's wife, fanning herself with a painted silk fan, her eyes narrowed in speculation. There was the old dowager from the Su family, leaning forward on her cane like a hawk watching a mouse. There was even my own former maid, Qingdai, who had pressed herself into a corner, her face pale with worry. I met Qingdai's eyes for just a heartbeat, and I saw her confusion. In my first life, I had screamed at her that morning. I'd thrown a teacup at the wall and told her to get out of my sight, and she'd wept and begged me not to go to the wedding. She'd known what would happen. She'd always known better than I did. This time, I gave her the tiniest nod. A promise. A reassurance. I would not make the same mistakes. Xie Cong studied me for a long, uncomfortable moment. I could see the hairs turning behind his handsome, cold eyes. He had expected a scene. He had prepared himself for TRS and recriminations, for the kind of public humiliation that would justify him taking a concubine in the first place. My composure unsettled him. If Madame is unwell, he said slowly, then Madame should rest. Yinchuang will be staying in the Jade of fragrant blossoms. I trust you will see that she has everything she needs. Jade of fragrant blossoms. The most beautiful courtyard in the manor, with its koi pond and its flowering almond trees and its view of the distant hills. He had renovated it for her. He had spent 3 months and a fortune on it, and I had not set foot in it once in 5 years. I will see to it personally, I said. Sister Yinchuang need not worry about a thing. I curtsied. A low, graceful, perfect curtsy, the kind that had made my mother's etiquette tutor weep with pride. Then I turned, and I walked out of that hall with my spine straight and my steps unhurried, and I did not look back once. The moon gate to my courtyard was a half-mile walk through winding corridors and small gardens. I knew every inch of this path. I had paced it 100 times in my first life, running to the main hall to plead with Xie Cong to see me, to explain some slight that Yinchuang had manufactured against me. I had run until my slippers wore thin and my breath came in ragged sobs, and every time, I had been turned away. This time, I walked. Slowly. Deliberately. My hands were folded in front of me, my sleeves hiding the tremors I could not quite suppress. The courtyard was small and plain, tucked away behind the servants' quarters. It had been my mother-in-law's dowry cottage, and when I'd first married, the old dowager had given it to me with a sigh and a pat on the hand. It's not grand, child, but it's private. You'll like it better than the main house, I promise. She'd been right. I had liked it. I had made it my own, with trailing vines and a small stone bench by the window, and I had been content here until the day Xie Cong had stopped coming to visit. Madam. Qing Dai Ape read at the gate behind me, her footsteps light and hurried. She caught my arm and pulled me into the courtyard, her eyes scanning the shadows for listeners. Madam, what happened? They said you went to the hall. I was so frightened, I thought. I went to the hall, I said. And then I left. That is all. She read at me. Qing Dai had been with me since I was 17, a thin, nervous girl with a sharp mind and a sharper tongue when no one was listening. In my first life, she'd been sold to a brothel in the southern provinces when Yinchuang accused her of stealing a hairpin. I'd never found her. I'd looked for Rs, and I'd never found her. Madam, she said slowly, you're not crying. I have no TRS left, I told her, and it was the truest thing I'd said all day. She did not understand, but she nodded anyway, because she trusted me. That was the thing about Qing Dai. She had always trusted me, even when I didn't deserve it. I walked past her into my chamber. The room was dim and ciel, the shutters drawn against the afternoon heat. My reflection read back at me from the bronze mirror on the dressing table, a woman of 23, with hollow cheeks and tired eyes, wearing a gown that had faded from green to a dull, dusty gray. I had not bought new clothes in 2 years. I had not needed to. No one came to see me. I sat down in front of the mirror and began unpinning my hair. The pins were plain silver, tarnished with age. In my first life, I had taken them out one by one, and I'd wept, and I'd told myself that tomorrow I would try harder. Tomorrow I would be prettier, sweeter, more agreeable. Tomorrow I would win Xie Cong's heart. He had never had a heart to win. Qing Dai, I said, and she was there instantly, her hands reaching out to help me with the pins. Bring me the key to the iron chest. She froze. Madam. The iron chest, I repeated. The one beneath my bed. The one I told you never to open. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to a rague, saw my expression, and closed it again. Then she scurried to the bed, knelt down, and dragged out the small, heavy chest that had been gathering dust for 5 years that I took the key from my sleeve. I had worn it around my neck every single day since I'd married, hidden beneath my collar, and no one had ever known. The key opened the chest, and inside, wrapped in oiled silk, were the things my mother had given me on her deathbed, a deed to 3 small shops in the eastern quarter, a stack of silver notes stamped with the seal of the Hengchang Bank, and a jade pendant Xie Reved with the Cha Rakter 4 safe. I had never used any of them. In my first life, I'd been too proud, too trusting, too certain that Xie Cong would protect me. And when Yinchuang had found the chest and claimed I was embezzling from the household funds, I had not been able to prove otherwise. The silver notes had been confiscated. The shops had been transferred to my husband's name. The jade pendant had been smashed by Yinchuang's maid, and I had watched the pieces scatter on the floor like broken TRS that I lifted the stack of silver notes and counted them. 100 taels. 200. 500. Not a fortune, but enough. Enough to start again. Qing Dai, I said, and my voice was calm, so calm it frightened even me. Tomorrow, I need you to take this note and go to the East Street. There is a shop called Ruifuxiang. The shopkeeper is an old man with a mole on his cheek. Tell him the lady of the second branch is sending him a gift, and ask for the market price. I wrote the note on a scrap of paper, using the code my mother had taught me. It said nothing important, only a list of goods that any woman might buy. But it had a hidden meaning. I am ready. Keep watch. Qing Dai took the note with trembling fingers. Madam, what are you planning? I met her eyes in the mirror. For a moment, I saw my own reflection again, hollow and tired and dead-eyed. And then I saw something else. Something that had not been there before. I am planning, I said, to survive. That night, the noise from the main house drifted across the Jade den. Music and laughter and the clinking of wine cups, the kind of celebration that went on until dawn. I sat in the dark of my chamber, my hands folded in my lap, and I listened. In my first life, I had lain awake and wept. I had pressed my pillow to my face and tried to muffle the sound of my own heart breaking. I had hated myself for being so pathetic, so helpless, so utterly dependent on a man who had never loved me. This time, I counted the minutes. I counted the songs. I waited for the moment when the music would falter and the guests would begin to stumble home, and I thought about everything I had reneged in the years between my first death and my second birth. Yinchuang was not just a concubine. She was a weapon, wielded by her father, the commissioner of Jiangnan Silk, who wanted access to the Remei connections that my husband's title provided. Xie Cong had married me for the same reason, to claim my father's influence over the northwestern Jie Rizens. But my father had retired, and his soldiers were no longer loyal to anyone in the capital. I had become useless. Yinchuang would do what she had done before. She would isolate me, rob me, and eventually, she would kill me. The first time, it had taken 3 years. This time, I had no intention of waiting. The music stopped at last. I heard the main gates groan open, heard the clatter of carriages and the slurred goodbyes of drunken officials. And then I heard footsteps approaching my courtier road. They were not the heavy boots of a steward or the soft slippers of a maid. They were the measured, deliberate steps of a man who was trying very hard to be quiet. I rose from my chair and moved to the window. Through the crack in the shutters, I saw Xie Cong standing at the entrance to my courtier, his ceremonial robes loosened, his hair coming undone. He was looking at the closed gate of my little cottage with an expression I could not quite read. He waited there for a long time. I waited, too, frozen behind the shutters, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then he turned and walked away. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was rage, cold and crystalline, the kind of rage that did not weep or shriek. The kind of rage that planned. Madam, Qingdai's voice came from the corner of the room. She had been pretending to sleep on the daybed, but I'd known she was awake. Go back to sleep, I said quietly. We have a long day tomorrow. She hesitated. Madam, the young master from the main house asked about you at the feast. I heard the servants talking. He said, I turned. He said what? He said you looked like you'd seen a ghost. I almost laughed. Almost. Tell me something, Qingdai. Do you believe in second chances? She read at me. Madam. I turned back to the window, where the moon was rising over the rooftops of the Marquis' manor, casting silver light on the tangled vines of my little jade. I believe, I said softly, that I have been given one. And I do not intend to waste it. The night deepened. The music finally stopped. In the distant jade of fragrant blossoms, Zhenyuan was probably sleeping in silk sheets, dreaming of the day she would take my place as first wife. But I knew something she did not. I knew the future. I knew every trap she would set, every whisper she would plant, every false tear she would shed. And this time, I was ready. In the morning, I woke before dawn and dressed in my plainest gown. I put the iron chest back beneath my bed, but I kept the silver notes tucked in my sleeve. I opened the courtyard gate and walked to the kitchen, where the servants were already preparing the morning meal, and I asked for fresh ginger and honey, just as I had done every morning for the past 5 years. The CKS gave me the ginger. They were used to my requests. I was, after all, the forgotten wife, the one who drank her tea alone, the one who had never made trouble for anyone. But as I walked back across the courtyard, the steam from my tea curling around my face, I saw him again. Xie Cong, standing at the edge of my jade, watching me with those calculating eyes. Madam, he said, and he almost looked regretful. You rose rly. I always rise rly, my lord, I said. You have simply not been here to see it. His eyes flickered. Something like guilt passed across his face, but it was gone before I could name it. About the wedding, he began. I know it was sudden. I know you must feel. I feel nothing, I said, and I smiled a small, tired, empty smile. It is a wife's duty to accept her husband's decisions. I have accepted yours. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a headache. I walked past him. I walked back to my chamber, closed the door, and stood with my back against it, breathing deep. He had come to apologize. In my first life, he had not come. In my first life, he had ignored me for a month, then shown up only to lecture me about acting the part of a proper first wife. That he had come this time, that he had almost said sorry, meant that my composure had unsettled him. It meant that I had already changed the story. I let myself smile. A real smile, this time, small and fierce and sharp as a blade. The game had begun. And I was going to win. To our readers, the first chapter sets the stage. In the next chapter, Shuang makes her first move, the dowager's hidden chest grows heavier, and our madam begins to untangle the webs woven around her. If you enjoyed this taste of revenge and rediscovery, please consider adding this story to your library and leaving a review. Your support brings the next chapter alive faster. See you soon. The first thing Zhenyuan did was come to my courtyard with a bowl of soup. She arrived 3 days after the wedding, just as the morning sun was burning off the mist over my little jade. I was sitting on the stone bench by the window, mending a tear in one of my old gowns, when I heard the light tap of her slippers on the cobblestones. Qing Dai had already warned me she was coming. The kitchen girl had run ahead with the news. The new concubine is Crying a covered bowl, and she looks like she's been crying. I set down my needle and thread and arranged my face into a mask of polite welcome that she came through the gate like a breeze Crying petals, all flowing silk and trembling lashes. Her gown was the color of apricot blossoms, so new the fabric still held its creases, and her hair was pinned with tiny pearls that caught the light with every movement. She looked like a painting that had stepped off a scroll and Leah rened to walk. Sister, she said, and her voice broke on the word as though it cost her something. Sister, I have come to apologize. I rose and gestured to the other stone bench. There is nothing to apologize for, Sister Xiencong. Please, sit. You shouldn't be on your feet so early. She sat, but only after a small, graceful hesitation, as though she was afraid I might snatch the seat away. She set the covered bowl on the little table between us and pushed it toward me with both hands. I made this myself, she said. Ginseng and red date soup, for your health. I know you have been unwell, and I thought maybe we could start again. As sisters. I looked at the bowl. The porcelain was fine, painted with pink peonies, and steam curled from beneath the lid. It smelled sweet and medicinal, exactly the kind of soup a thoughtful young woman might prepare for a sickly elder sister. In my first life, I had drunk it with tears in my eyes, so touched by her kindness that I had forgiven her everything. I had drunk it and thanked her and called her my dar sister, and within a week, I had begun to feel tired all the time. A month later, my monthly courses had become so painful I could rely stand. And 3 months after that, I had lost the baby. I hadn't even known I was crying. Xiencong had been very sorry about the baby. She had wept at my bedside and promised to pray for its soul, and I had believed her. Thank you, I said now, and I reached for the bowl. My fingers brushed the porcelain, and I saw her eyes flicker with concealed eagerness. That is so thoughtful of you. Truly. I lifted the lid and inhaled the steam. The scent was stronger now, cloying and sharp beneath the sweetness. I knew that smell. I knew the herbs that made it. My mother's old medicine chest had been full of them, and my mother had taught me to recognize poison by its perfume. Sister, I said, setting the lid back down, this is kind of you. But my stomach has been so unsettled lately that even ginseng turns sour on me. I wonder if you would be willing to share this with me. It would be such a shame to waste it. Her face went very still. For just a fraction of a second, I saw something cold and sharp glitter beneath those weeping lashes. Then it was gone, and she was smiling again, a little too brightly. Oh, I couldn't. It's for you, sister. I would never take what is meant for you. Please, I insisted. I insist. It would make me feel so much better to see you enjoying it. We could share it together, like true sisters. I poured half the soup into a second cup that Qing Dai had quietly placed on the table. I pushed it toward Xiencong and raised my own cup to my lips, but I did not drink. I only held it there, waiting. Her hand trembled as she reached for the cup. I could see the calculation running behind her eyes, the frantic weighing of options. If she refused to drink, she would look suspicious. If she drank, she would be swallowing the poison she had meant for me. She had prepared this soup herself, in her own kitchen, with no witnesses. There was no one she could blame. She lifted the cup to her lips. She drank. A small sip, a mouthful, but enough that I lowered my own cup without drinking and smiled. Thank you for sharing this with me, sister. It was my heart to know we can be so close. Her eyes were watering. Whether from the bitterness of the herbs or from sheer rage, I couldn't tell. She set the cup down with a clatter and rose so abruptly she knocked the table over. I must go. The midday meal is being prepared, and I promised the kitchen I would help. Of course. I watched her retreat. She walked quickly, no longer graceful, one hand pressed to her stomach as though she was already feeling the effects. Qingdai waited until the gate closed behind her. Then she let out a long, shaky breath. Madam, what was in that soup? Cold herbs, I said. The kind that make a woman be a wren. I picked up the cup she had drunk from and sniffed it again. She put enough in that pot to ruin a dozen wounds. Qingdai's face went pale. Then why did you make her drink it? She'll know you know. She doesn't know I know, I said. She only knows that I didn't drink, and that she felt obliged to taste her own medicine. I poured the remaining soup into the jade soil, where the roots of my half-dead rose bush would soak it up. She'll be sick tonight. Very sick. And she'll wonder how I avoided it. But she won't retry the same trick twice. Qingdai sta read at me as though I'd grown a second head. Madam, you've changed. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. In my first life, they had shaken constantly, from nerves, from exhaustion, from the endless, gnawing fear of saying the wrong thing. I said. Now go. Find out who in her household rise her medicine pouches. That evening, the news came as I had expected. Zhenyuan had taken to her bed with a terrible stomach illness. The household physician had been summoned, and he had diagnosed a bad case of food poisoning from spoiled ingredients. Shuang had wept and moaned and insisted she had eaten nothing unusual, only that she must have caught a chill from walking in the jade. Xie Cong visited her. He stood at her bedside and listened to her complaints, and then he came to my courtier with a thunderous expression. Madam, he said, and his voice was ice, what did you do to her? I was reading a book by lamplight. I set it down and looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Do to her, my lord, I'm afraid I don't understand. She said you made her drink soup this morning. She said you forced her to taste something she'd prepared for you, and now she can be a rely keep water down. I tilted my head. I did offer her soup, my lord. She came to my courtier with a bowl of ginseng and red dates and asked me to share it with her. I suggested we drink it together, as sisters, and we did. She seemed perfectly fine when she left. I had no idea she had become ill after a road. Xie Cong studied me. His eyes were narrow, suspicious, but I had given him nothing to seize on. I had not poisoned Shuang. I had not even touched the soup. She had poisoned herself, and now she was reaping the consequences of her own malice. I will investigate this, he said finally. If I find you have been scheming, investigate all you like, I said, and I picked up my book again. But you will find nothing, my lord. Because I have done nothing. He left. He didn't slam the door, but he left with a stiff back and clenched fists, and I knew he was not satisfied. That was fine. I didn't need him satisfied. I only needed him uncertain. Shuang stayed in her bed for 3 days. On the 4th day, I sent her a basket of fresh fruits and a note wishing her a swift recovery. On the 5th day, she emerged from her courtier looking thinner and paler than before, but with a new sharpness in her eyes. She had learned something from our first encounter. She had learned that I was not the helpless fool she remembered that I saw her watching me at the evening meal that night. She sat on Xie Cong's left, picking at her food, and every few minutes her gaze would drift to me. I ate calmly, drank my tea, and did not meet her eyes. But I was watching her too. I was watching the way she leaned into Xie Cong's shoulder when she thought no one was looking, the way she whispered to the steward, the way her hand drifted to her stomach as though she was protecting something precious that she had not yet announced it. In my first life, she had waited until the 2nd month to reveal her pregnancy, when it could no longer be hidden. But I knew. I knew because I had lived through it once before. She was Xie Cong's child. The news hit me like a blow to the chest, even though I had been expecting it. I kept my face neutral, kept my hands steady, but something inside me twisted and knotted with cold, familiar grief. In my first life, I had lost my own baby to her scheming. This time, I would not give her the chance to harm me. But she would have his child, and that child would be his heir, and everything I had suffered would be meaningless. Unless I found a way to prove she had been trying to poison me. Unless I could plant the seeds of doubt in Xie Cong's mind. I began to move pieces on the Boa road. The first piece was the household accounts. I asked the steward to bring me the ledgers, and he brought them with a reluctant, suspicious shuffle. I sat down with them that night and went through every entry for the past 6 months. Zhenyuan had been in the household for less than a month, but her spending was already prodigious. Silks, jewels, cosmetics, gifts to the household staff, bribes disguised as thank yous to the senior maids. She had also sent 2 large remittances to her father in Jiangnan, recorded as gifts to family and signed with Xie Cong's seal. I copied down the relevant entries on a separate sheet of paper. Then I went to the East Wing, where the old dowager's chambers had been sealed since her death. The dowager had left me a letter, hidden in a hollowed-out book, and in it she had written, "My son is weak, child. He is easily swayed by flattery and pretty faces. But he is not stupid. If you can show him that his pocketbook is being drained, he will listen." I took the letter and tucked it into my sleeve. Then I went to find Xie Cong. He was in his study, reviewing correspondence from the Ministry of War. He looked up when I entered, and his eyes flickered with surprise. Ira Relay came to his study. In my first life, I had been too afraid of his disapproval to interrupt him. "My lord," I said, and I held out the list of Zhenyuan's expenditures. "I believe there is something you should see." He took the paper. He read it. His face, which had been merely annoyed, keened into something much more dangerous. "What is this?" he said. "These are the sums that have been paid from the household accounts to Sister Zhenyuan's family in Jiangnan over the past 3 weeks. The total, as you can see, is nearly 3,000 taels of silver." He read at the paper. I could see him adding the numbers in his head, could see the slow, dawning realization that he had been used. "She said the gifts were minor," he muttered. "Family remittances for her aging mother." I signed without thinking. "Of course you did," I said gently. "You are a generous husband. But 3,000 taels is more than we spend on the entire household in a year, my lord. And if Sister Zhenyuan's father is receiving such sums without proper documentation, it might look to outside eyes as though he has purchased his daughter's position." I let that hang in the air. The implication was clear. If the commissioner of Jiangnan Silk was using his daughter to funnel money out of the Marquis's household, it could be interpreted as bribery. It could be interpreted as corruption. In the court of the emperor, such appearances could ruin a man's career. Xie Cong stood up so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. "I will speak to her." "Please," I said, "do not be too harsh. She is young and perhaps does not understand the weight of such transactions. A gentle reminder might be more effective than a scolding." He looked at me. For a moment, I saw something unfamiliar in his face. Respect, perhaps. Or confusion. "You are defending her." "I am defending this household," I said. "And your reputation, my lord." He nodded slowly. Then he strode out of the study, leaving me alone with the flickering candles and the stack of correspondence. I allowed myself a small, private smile. I had not accused Zhenyuan. I had not thrown a tantrum or made demands. I had simply shown him the evidence and let his own paranoia do the work. That night, I heard raised voices from the den of fragrant blossoms. They were faint, audible, but the tone was unmistakable. Xie Cong was not gentle. He was shouting, and Shuang was crying, and somewhere in the middle of it, I heard a crash, as though something heavy had been knocked to the floor. Qingdai came to my door. "Madam," she whispered, "the master is in a fury. He told the concubine that if she sends another coin to her family without his approval, he will confine her to her quarters for the rest of her pregnancy." Pregnancy. She had announced it then. She had used it as a shield. I nodded. "Bring me a cup of warm milk," I said. "I need to sleep early tonight." I did not sleep, of course. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the distant sounds of sobbing and shouting, and I thought about what came next. Shuang would not give up easily. She would come for me again, more refully this time. She would find allies among the servants, plant spies in my household, spread rumors about my coldness, my malice, my failure to give Xie Cong a child. But I had something she did not have. I had experience. I had knowledge of exactly what she would do, and when she would do it. The next morning, I woke early and went to the kitchen. I read a small tray of simple food, congee, pickled vegetables, a cup of fresh tea. I ride it myself to the den of fragrant blossoms. Shuang was sitting up in her bed when I arrived. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair loose and tangled around her shoulders. She looked at me with naked hatred, and for a moment, I saw the real woman beneath the mask of gentleness. "I brought you breakfast," I said. "You must be hungry after such a difficult night." She read at me. "Why are you here?" I set the tray on the table beside her bed. "Because we are sisters," I said. "And sisters take of each other." I left before she could answer. I did not look back. In my first life, I had been so consumed by jealousy and fear that I had not seen what I was doing. I had been reactive, weak, always one step behind. This time, I was the one setting the pace. I was the one choosing the battlefield. Shuang had tried to poison me. She had failed. She had used her father to drain the household accounts. That had been exposed. Now she would try something else. She would try to turn the household against me, to isolate me, to make me seem like the villain. Let her try. I would be ready. That afternoon, I sent Qingdai on an errand. I gave her the silver notes from my iron chest and instructions to visit 3 different moneylenders in the city. I told her to open accounts in her own name, small accounts, nothing that would attract attention. I told her to buy the debt notes of a few key servants. Qingdai read at me. "Madam, these servants, these are the concubine's people." "I know," I said. "That is why I want their debts. I would not win the servants' loyalty by being kind. I would not win it by being generous. I would win it by owning their obligations, by making them understand that their futures depended on my goodwill. It was not noble. It was not kind. But it was necessary. Madam," Qingdai said hesitantly, is this really the right path?" I looked at her. She was so young, so loyal, so full of hope that I would find a better way. But I had tried the better way. I had tried kindness and patience and forgiveness, and it had killed me. "No," I said. "It is not the right path. It is the only path." She nodded. She took the silver notes and went out the gate, and I watched her go with a strange ache in my chest. In my first life, I had failed everyone who loved me. This time, I would not fail. Even if I had to become someone I recognized. Evening fell. The lamps were lit. The household settled into its nightly rhythm, and I sat in my courtyard, listening to the wind stir the vines. I had done what I could for today. There was only one thing left to do. I took out my mother's jade pendant, the one I had hidden in the iron chest, and I held it in my palm. It was CL and smooth, worn by the Yaras, and the character for safe was still visible, just rely. I had kept it all this time, even when I had lost everything else. Stepmother, I whispered, I know you taught me to be kind. I know you taught me to turn the other cheek. But I cannot do that anymore. They hurt me. They killed me. And I will not let them do it again. The pendant did not answer. It was just a piece of stone, revered by a dead craftsman, worn by a dead woman. But holding it gave me strength. I tucked it back into my sleeve and went inside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Shuang would try again. Xie Cong might turn against me. The servants might betray me. But I had something I had not had before, a plan, a purpose, and the cold, steady determination to see it through. Good night, I said to the empty room. And good luck to all of us. We are going to need it. The candles guttered and went out. The darkness wrapped around me like a shroud, and I closed my eyes. In my dreams, I saw myself walking through the den of fragrant blossoms. I saw myself smiling. I saw myself holding a cup of tea in one hand, offering it to Shuang with all the warmth of a true sister. Drink, I said. It will make you feel better. In the dream, she drank. She drank and she smiled, and the smile never left her face, even as she crumpled to the ground. I woke with a gasp. The room was still dark. The wind was still stirring the vines. And somewhere in the distance, I heard the first rooster crow, announcing the dawn of a new day. I got out of bed and went to the window. The sky was just beginning to lighten, pale gray and pink at the edges. Another day. Another chance. I opened the window and breathed in the clean air. Today, I said softly, I take the next step. And I believed it. Our readers, we are just beginning. The tables are turning, and our madam is proving that she is no one's pawn. If you are enjoying this story of quiet revenge and hidden strength, please share your thoughts in the comments and consider adding this tale to your library. The next chapter brings more intrigue, more danger, and a secret that will change everything. See you soon. The household turned against me on a Tuesday. I knew it was coming. I had felt the shift in the air for days, the way the servants lowered their voices when I passed, the way the kitchen maid suddenly forgot my preference for jasmine tea, the way the gardener let the weeds creep up around my gate. Shuang had been busy while I was busy with her accounts. She had been planting seeds, and they had taken root. A root with a missing bracelet. A jade bracelet, worth more than most servants' rened in a lifetime, had vanished from Shuang's dressing table. She had screamed. She had wept. She had summoned every maid in her courtier and questioned them until the poor girls were sobbing, and then she had sent a message to Xie Cong, begging him to do something. He did something. He came to my courtier with 4 remed gua rds and demanded the right to see my chambers. I was drinking tea when he arrived. I had been expecting him since morning, when Qing Dai told me that Shuang's head maid had been seen conferring with the head steward in the den. I had read for this moment. I had read for it meticulously. My lord, I said, rising from my chair, you are welcome to see anything you like. I have nothing to hide. He looked at me with that cold, suspicious gaze. He had believed Shuang. Of course he had believed her. She was Ring his child, and I was just the wife he had married for convenience. Madam, he said, if you have taken something that does not belong to you, now is the time to return it. I will be lenient. I have taken nothing, I said. My chambers. My den. My servants' quarters. I have nothing to hide. He nodded to the guards. They filed past me into my small cottage, overturning furniture, pulling out drawers, rifling through my clothes. I watched them with a calm I did not feel. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steadied. The CRCH took a long time. My chambers were small, but the guards were thorough. They checked every corner, every cupboard, every folded gown. They checked the space beneath my bed, the hollow behind my mirror, the loose floorboard under my desk. And then one of them found it. It was Shuang's bracelet. The jade was bright and flawless, and it was wrapped in a scrap of silk, hidden in the false bottom of my jewelry box. The Gua RD held it up with a triumphant cry, and Xie Cong's face went white. Madam, he said, and his voice was a whisper, explain yourself. I looked at the bracelet. I looked at the Gua RD's smug expression. I looked at the other servants who had gathered at the gate to watch, their eyes glittering with anticipation. And I laughed. Not a hysterical laugh. Not a desperate laugh. A soft, tired, amused laugh, as though someone had just told me a very good joke. Do you know how long it takes to set a trap like this? I said. I have been in my chambers all morning, my lord. My servants can vouch for me. The Gua RDS at the gate can vouch for me. If I had stolen this bracelet, when would I have had time to hide it? Xie Cong's expression flickered. You could have hidden it yesterday. I could have, I agreed. But why would I have never been to Sister Shuang's chambers. I have never touched her belongings. I have never given anyone any reason to suspect me of theft. And yet, here you are, with a bracelet in my jewelry box, discovered by a Gua RD who was sent to search my chambers without any warning. I paused, letting that sink in. Tell me, my lord, how did the Gua RD know exactly which floorboard to lift? How did he know exactly which box to open? He searched my entire chambers, but he went straight to that jewelry box as though someone had told him exactly where to look. The Gua RD's face went pale. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I turned to Xie Cong. I have nothing to gain from stealing a bracelet, my lord. But someone has everything to gain from making me look guilty. I gestured at the gathered servants. This is not about the bracelet. This is about removing me. Xie Cong sta read at me. Then he sta read at the Gua Road. Then he sta read at the bracelet, and I could see the Haya RS turning behind his eyes. He was not a stupid man. He had just been too willing to believe the worst of me. Crch the Gua RD's Qua rooters, he said abruptly. Now. The other Gua RDS scrambled to obey. The first Gua RD tried to protest, but Xie Cong silenced him with a single, cold look. We all waited in tense silence, and I watched Shuang's maid slip away from the gate, her face as white as the Gua RD's. 20 minutes later, the Gua RDS returned. They ride a small pouch. Inside the pouch was a note, written in Shuang's hand, with instructions to plant the bracelet in my jewelry box and a promise of 50 taels of silver as payment. The Gua RD was arrested. His confessions came quickly, as confessions always do when the net closes. He had been recruited by Shuang's head maid, who had promised him the silver and a position in her household when I was sent away. He had not thought twice about it. He had only wanted the money. Xie Cong sent for Shuang. She arrived with her hair in disarray and her eyes red from crying, and I had to admire her performance. She was so good at playing the victim, so practiced at conjuring TRS on demand. My lord, she wept, I don't understand. I never wrote that note. My maid must have done it without my knowledge. I would never. Your maid acted on your orders. Xie Cong cut her off. Or do you expect me to believe that she acted alone, for her own benefit, without any instruction from you? Shuang opened her mouth, but no excuse came out. For the first time, she looked genuinely lost. She had played this game so many times, had won so many victories, that she had forgotten what it felt like to lose. Send her to the cold courtier RD, I said quietly. Let her reflect on her actions. Xie Cong looked at me. The cold courtier RD, that's for servants who have been dismissed. It is for anyone who needs to remember their place, I said. She is Ryan your child, my lord. She is still the mother of your heir. But she needs to understand that she cannot treat your wife as her enemy. I was being generous. I was being reasonable. I was being everything a good, forgiving wife should be. Xie Cong saw it. He saw my mercy, my restraint, my willingness to protect the mother of his child despite everything she had done. He nodded slowly. Very well. The cold courtier rode. For 1 month. And her maid will be sold. Xie screamed. She screamed and she wept and she begged, but the guards were already taking her away. I watched her go, and I felt nothing but a cold, steady satisfaction. That night, Xie Cong came to my chambers. He didn't knock. He simply pushed open the door and stood there, looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. That I was wrong about her, he said. I was wrong about a great many things. Are you asking me to forgive you, my lord? I said. That I am asking you to understand, he said. I did not know what she was capable of. I did not know what she had planned. And now you know, I said. What will you do with that knowledge? He walked across the room and sat on the edge of my bed. I will be more careful, he said. I will not trust her so easily. And I will. He stopped. He looked at his hands. I will try to be a better husband to you, madam. I almost laughed. A better husband. He thought he could be a better husband, after everything he had done. After the years of neglect, the days of loneliness, the nights I had spent crying into my pillow while he was warming his new concubine's bed. But I did not laugh. I smiled instead. I am grateful, my lord, I said. I am grateful for your honesty. He reached out and took my hand. His fingers were warm and smooth, the hands of a man who had never known hardship. We can start again, he said. We can be happy, you and I. I looked at his hand covering mine. In my first life, I would have wept with joy at this moment. I would have thrown myself into his arms and promised to be the perfect wife, the loving companion, the devoted partner. This time, I simply nodded. Whatever you think is best, my lord. He stayed that night. He slept in my bed, his arm draped over my waist, and I lay awake beside him, sta ring at the ceiling. He was warm. He was solid. He was everything I had once wanted. But I felt nothing. The next day, I walked through the cold courtier road. It was a barren place, a few stone walls and a single tree, nothing like the lush gardens of the main house. Xie was sitting on a wooden bench, wrapped in a thin blanket, shivering in the autumn chill. She saw me coming. Her eyes fla red with hatred, and she rose to her feet with a speed that sta riled me. You, she hissed. You did this. Did what, sister? I said. Defend myself. Show your husband the truth. She advanced on me, her hands clenched into fists. You're a snake, she spat. You think you've won, but you haven't. I will come back from this. I will make you regret every breath you take. I looked at her. She was so angry, so full of venom, and for a moment, I almost pitied her. She had been raised to be this way. She had been trained to see every other woman as an enemy, and to win at all costs. I don't doubt you will try, I said. But I will be ready. She lunged at me. Her hands reached for my throat, and I stepped aside easily. She stumbled and fell, her belly hitting the stone floor, and she let out a terrible shriek of pain. I stood over her, watching her writhe. Sister, I said softly, be careful. The health of your child is paramount. Wouldn't you agree? She looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. She had fallen because she had attacked me. She had risked her unborn child because of her own rage. And now she was lying on the cold stone, clutching her belly, knowing that no one would believe her if she tried to blame me. Help me, she whispered. Please. Help me. I knelt down beside her. I will, I said. I will get the physician. I will make sure you and your child are safe. And I did. I summoned the physician. I stayed with her until he arrived. I held her hand through the contractions and the bleeding, and I watched the color drain from her face. The physician did his work. Shuang survived. Her child survived. But she was weak now, weaker than she had ever been, and she knew it. She looked at me as I left the courtyard that evening, and I saw something new in her eyes. Fear. For the first time, she was afraid of me. I walked back to my chambers with a light step. The game was not over, but I had won a major victory. Shuang was disgraced. Xie Cong was suspicious of her. And the household knew that the first wife was not as weak as she had seemed. Qingdai was waiting for me with tea. Madam, she said, the servants are talking. They're saying the concubine attacked you and hurt herself in the process. They are not wrong, I said. But you didn't even defend yourself, she said. You just stepped aside. I took the tea and drank. I didn't need to defend myself, I said. She defeated herself. Qingdai Sta read at me for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Madam, she said, you are frightening. Good, I said. Fear is useful. That night, I sat in my courtyard and watched the moon rise over the rooftops. The cold courtyard was silent. The jade den of fragrant blossoms was empty. And Xie Cong was in his study, brooding over everything that had happened. That I had done what I had set out to do. I had isolated Shuang. I had made Xie Cong question his judgment. I had secured the loyalty of the servants. But there was still more to do. Shuang was too clever to give up forever. And Xie Cong was too proud to truly trust me. That I took out my mother's jade pendant and held it to my chest. I am still here, I whispered. I am still fighting. And I will not stop. The wind stirred the vines. The moon climbed higher. And somewhere in the distance, a night bird sang a single, clear note. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But I was ready. Our readers, this chapter saw our madam turn a trap into a triumph. The cold courtyard holds more secrets than we know, and Shuang's fall is only the beginning of a longer, darker game. If you are enjoying this journey of survival and cunning, please leave a review and add this story to your reading list. Your support powers every chapter. See you next time. The cold courtyard took more from Shuang than I had expected. I visited her on the 10th day of her confinement, not out of charity but because Qingdai had brought me news that made my blood run cold. She was not eating. She was drinking. The servants who brought her meals said she spent most of her days curled on her pallet, ring at the wall, and that she spoke to no one. This was not the woman I remembered. In my first life, Shuang had been relentless, a creature of endless cunning and bottomless energy. She had been beaten down before, but she had always risen again, stronger and more vicious than before. The fact that she was not rising worried me. I went to the cold courtyard alone. The sky was gray and heavy, threatening rain, and the wind cut through my thin robes like a blade. Shuang was sitting on the wooden bench beneath the single tree, wrapped in her blanket, and she looked up when I entered. Her face was gaunt. Her cheeks were hollow, and her eyes had a glassy, feverish quality that I did not like. Her belly was still round with child, but the rest of her had wasted away. You came, she said. Her voice was rely more than a whisper. I knew you would come. I came to see how you were. I said. The servants told me you were unwell. She laughed. It was a thin, brittle sound, like cracking ice. Unwell, she repeated. Yes. I am unwell. I am dying, madam. Is that what you wanted? I took a step closer. You are not dying, I said. You are being dramatic. Ami, she lifted her hand, and I saw that it was trembling violently. I can't keep anything down. I can't sleep. I can't stop thinking about everything. She looked at me with those fever-bright eyes. I have dreams, madam. Terrible dreams. I waited. I dream that I am falling, she said. Falling through darkness, with nothing to hold on to. And at the bottom of the darkness, there is a woman. She looks like me, but she's not me. She's smiling. And she says, this is what happens to women who lose. I felt a chill run down my spine. She was not faking this. The fear in her eyes was real. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I have no allies left. My father will not help me. The servants have all turned against me. And Xie Cong. She shook her head. He will not even look at me. I sat down on the bench beside her. It was a risk, getting close to her. But I needed to understand what was happening. Tell me, I said. Tell me what you really want. She read at me. What I want deep down, I said. Beyond the schemes and the poison and the lies. What do you actually want? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. And then, to my astonishment, she began to cry. Not the pretty, practiced TRS she had used so effectively in the past. Real TRS, ugly TRS. The kind that came from somewhere deep and broken. I want to be safe, she sobbed. I have never been safe, not for one single moment in my entire life. My father sold me to the first man who offered enough silver. My mother taught me that the only way to survive was to destroy everyone else. I don't know how to be anything else, madam. I don't know how to be good. I watched her weep, and I felt something I had not expected. Not pity. Pity was too soft, too sentimental. But recognition. I recognized the desperation in her voice. I recognized the fear. It was the same fear that had driven me to TRS in my first life. Shuang, I said, and I used her name for the first time, without the honorific. Do you want to get out of this? She looked at me with those swollen, desperate eyes. What do you mean? I said, that we are both trapped in this house, under this man's thumb. You thought you could climb over me to reach a better position. But what happens when you reach the top? You will still be his property. You will still be nothing more than a vessel for his children and a decoration for his halls. She was silent. I am not your enemy, I said. Xie Cong is your enemy. This system is your enemy. And until you see that, you will always be fighting the wrong battle. She shook her head slowly. You're trying to trick me. Maybe I am, I said. But ask yourself this, has anything I've done to you been worse than what your father did, than what Xie Cong does every day by keeping you locked in this courtyard? I stood up. I walked to the gate. And before I left, I looked back at her. Think about it, I said. If you want a different life, you know where to find me. I left her there, sitting on the cold bench, ring at the gray sky. That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake in my bed, thinking about Shuang's words. She had been so broken, so utterly defeated. In my first life, I had not seen this side of her. I had seen only the scheming, the poison, the slow destruction of everything I loved. But now I wondered. Had she been broken in my first life too? Had she been just as desperate, just as trapped, and had I been too consumed by my own pain to see it? I did not forgive her. I could not forgive her. She had taken my child. She had taken my life. But I could understand her, and understanding was a different kind of weapon. The next morning, Qing Dai brought me word that Shuang had asked for a doctor. She was sick again, more seriously this time. The physician who visited her came to me afterward with a grave expression. Madam, he said, the concubine's condition is delicate. Her humors are badly unbalanced, and she is not strong enough to carry the child to term. I have prescribed rest and nourishment, but if she does not improve, the baby may not survive. I thought about this. I thought about Yinchuang's child, the child that had been conceived to replace me. In my first life, that child had been the instrument of my destruction. This child, if it lived, would be another weapon against me. But if it died, what would I have? Another life lost. Another tragedy in a household already drowning in them. Keep her alive, I said. Spare no expense. If she needs herbs, send to the best apothecary in the city. If she needs rest, see that she gets it. The physician looked surprised. But madam, he said, the concubine is your enemy. She is, I agreed. But she is also a person. And I will not have her death on my conscience. I visited her again that afternoon. She was lying in her pallet, wrapped in blankets, her face pale and sweating. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment, I saw the old hatred flicker in her eyes. Then it faded, replaced by exhaustion. You sent the physician, she said. Why? Because I don't want you to die, I said. Not like this. Not with nothing resolved. She laughed weakly. You think there is something to resolve. You think we can become friends, madam, after everything I have done? No, I said. I don't think we can be friends. But I think we can stop being enemies. I think we can stop trying to destroy each other. She read at me. And what would that get me? It would get you your life, I said. The freedom to raise your child without fear. The freedom to be something other than a weapon. She closed her eyes. You're offering me a truce, she said. After everything. I'm offering you a choice, I said. Take it or leave it. I waited. The room was silent except for her labored breathing. And then, slowly, she nodded. I'll think about it, she said. That was enough. 3 days later, Yinchuang was moved from the cold courtyard to a small but comfortable room in the east wing. The move was Xie Cong's idea. He had heard about my visits, and he had interpreted them as kindness, as the noble behavior of a forgiving wife. She is still the mother of my child, he said to me that evening. Whatever she has done, I cannot let her suffer forever. Of course, I said. I would never ask you to do that, my lord. He looked at me with something like admiration. You are a remarkable woman, madam. I did not realize it before. I smiled. We all grow, my lord. Even the ones who seem set in their ways. He left that night, and I sat alone in my chamber, thinking. Yinchuang was moving to the east wing. She would have better food, warmer blankets, access to the jade den. She would recover her strength. And when she recovered, she would remember her hatred. I had not changed her. I had only made her pause. But that pause was enough. That pause gave me time. The next step was Xie Cong himself. I had been patient with him, patient and accommodating. I had listened to his concerns and supported his decisions. I had been everything a perfect wife should be. But perfect wives did not get what they wanted. Perfect wives were ignored, taken for granted, used and discarded. I needed to change his perception of me. I needed to become something more than the meek woman who accepted everything. So I began to push back. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Subtly, carefully. When he suggested something I did not agree with, I did not simply nod and smile. I asked questions. I raised concerns. I pointed out flaws in his thinking. You are being difficult, he said to me one evening, after I had questioned his decision to accept an invitation from Yinchuang's father. I am being thoughtful, I said. Your reputation is at stake, my lord. If you accept this invitation, you will are to be in his pocket. Is that the impression you want to give? He frowned. You think I should refuse? I think you should consider your options carefully, I said. The invitation is not a gift. It is a test. How you respond will determine how the court sees you. He read at me. Then he nodded slowly. You are right, he said. I will send my regrets. I smiled. A wise decision, my lord. Over the following weeks, I continued this strategy. I guided him gently toward the decisions I wanted him to make, always framing them as his own ideas. I made myself indispensable, not as a servant or a decoration, but as an advisor. And slowly, he began to rely on me. It was a strange feeling, being needed by the man who had once cast me aside. Part of me was tempted to enjoy it, to let myself believe that he had genuinely changed. But I knew better. Xie Cong had not changed. He had simply found a new use for me. That was fine. I had found a use for him too. The final piece of the puzzle was Yinchuang's child. She was recovering well, her strength slowly returning. The baby was healthy, growing steadily. And I realized, with a sudden, cold clarity, that I did not want it to die. It was not the child's fault. It had not asked to be conceived in the middle of a war. It had not chosen its mother, or its father, or its fate. That if I destroyed the child, I would be no better than Yinchuang. I would be no better than Xie Cong. So I made a decision. I would protect the child. Not for Yinchuang's sake, but for my own. I wanted to be able to look at myself in the mirror and see someone who had not become a monster. It was not forgiveness. It was not mercy. It was simply survival. I went to visit Yinchuang in her new room. She was sitting by the window, watching the leaves fall from the jade trees. She looked up when I entered, and there was no hatred in her eyes. Only exhaustion. The physician says you are recovering well, I said. I am, she said. The baby is strong. I nodded. Good. I am glad. She looked at me for a long moment. Why did you do this, madam? Why did you save me? I thought about it. I thought about all the reasons I could give her, the political calculation, the long-term strategy, the desire to protect my own reputation. But those were lies. The truth was simpler. Because I was tired of hating you, I said. It was exhausting. It was eating me alive. And I realized that if I kept hating you, I would become like you. And I don't want to be like you. She read at me. And then, to my surprise, she smiled. It was not a malicious smile. It was not a scheming smile. It was a small, tired, human smile. I don't want to be like me either, she said. Maybe we can both be something different. I sat down beside her. We sat in silence, watching the leaves fall, and for the first time, I did not feel like I was at war. The war was not over. There would be other battles, other enemies, other obstacles. But for this moment, there was peace. And that was enough. Our readers, this chapter marks a turning point. The rivalry between Yinchuang and our madam is not over, but it has shifted. Alliances are reforming, and the greatest enemies may yet become the most unexpected allies. If you are enjoying this intricate tale of survival and choice, please leave a review and add this story to your library. The next chapter brings the final confrontation. See you soon. Winter came to the manor like a slow, creeping death. The jades that had been so lush in summer were now skeletal and bare. The koi pond in the jade of fragrant blossoms froze solid, and the almond trees that had once bloomed so beautifully for Yinchuang's arrival stood black and twisted against the gray sky. I walked through the frozen paths every morning, wrapped in my thickest cloak, and I thought about how much had changed in the months since my rebirth. Yinchuang was no longer my enemy. She was not my friend either, not exactly. But we had reached an understanding. She kept to her east wing, and I kept to my courtyard, and when we passed each other in the corridors, we exchanged nods that were not hostile. It was the closest thing to peace I had ever known. Xie Cong was the one who changed. He had been coming to my chambers more and more often, seeking my advice on everything from household accounts to matters of state. He talked to me about his work at the Ministry of War, about the intrigues at court, about his FIARS and ambitions. And I listened, and I advised, and I watched him slowly, subtly, fall under my influence. It was strange. In my first life, I had loved him with a desperate, consuming love that had nearly destroyed me. In this life, I felt nothing for him. No love. No hate. Just the cold, practical awareness that he was useful. But he was growing suspicious. That I saw it in the way he looked at me sometimes, with a sharp, assessing gaze that reminded me of the man he had been when I first met him. He was not stupid. He had begun to realize that I was not the simple, docile wife he had married. He had begun to wonder what I was really after. And then, one night in early winter, he asked me directly. We were sitting in my chamber, sharing a pot of tea. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm shadows on the walls. Xie Cong was leaning back in his chair, his eyes half closed, looking more relaxed than I had ever seen him. Madam, he said, I have been thinking. About what, my lord? About you, he said. About how you have changed. I kept my face neutral. People change, my lord. Time does that to us all. Time, he repeated. Yes. But you have changed more than most. You were not always so controlled. So calculating. I set down my teacup. What are you trying to say, my lord? He opened his eyes and looked at me. His gaze was sharp, clear, and I realized that he had not been relaxed at all. He had been watching me, testing me, waiting for me to slip. I am saying, he said, that I do not believe you have forgiven me. I think you are replaying a longer game. And I want to know what it is. I read at him. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside the window. And I felt a cold, steady calm settle over me, the calm that came with knowing I had been discovered. It is not a game, my lord, I said. It is survival. He raised an eyebrow. Survival, I have been fighting for my life since the day I married you, I said. I did not realize it at first. I thought I was fighting for love, for affection, for a place in your heart. But I was wrong. I was fighting for the right to exist. To not be erased. He was silent. Zhenyuan tried to destroy me, I said. You allowed her to try. You gave her every tool she needed, and you looked the other way. And when she nearly succeeded, you did not lift a finger to help me. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. Let me finish, I said. I am not accusing you, my lord. I am explaining. I had to change. I had to become someone who could survive. And I did. I became the person who is sitting in front of you tonight. A person who will not be erased. He was still silent. His face was unreadable, and I could not tell what he was thinking. You have been a good wife, he said finally. A better wife than I deserve. Perhaps, I said. But that is not the point. Then what is the point? I took a breath. The point is that I am not going to be your victim, my lord. I am not going to be anyone's victim. And if you try to make me one, I will fight back. With everything I have. He read at me for a long, long moment. And then, slowly, he nodded. I understand, he said. I will not try to make you a victim, madam. I promise. I did not believe him. But I nodded, and we finished our tea, and he went back to his own chambers. The next day, I received a message from my father. It was a small scroll, wrapped in oiled silk and delivered by a messenger I did not recognize. I opened it in the privacy of my chamber, my hands trembling. Rest daughter, it read, I have heard things that trouble me deeply. There are whispers in the capital that your husband is being investigated by the Ministry of Rights for corruption. I do not know if these whispers are true, but I warn you now, protect yourself. Do not let his fall drag you down with him. I read the message 3 times. Then I burned it in the fire and watched the ashes curl into nothing. Xie Cong was being investigated. If he fell, the entire household would fall with him. I would lose everything, my home, my status, my safety. I would be cast out into the streets, a woman with no family and no protection. Unless I acted first. That I went to Yinchuang. That she was sitting in her room, her hands resting on her swollen belly, looking out at the winter Jade. She turned when I entered, and she must have seen something in my face because she immediately sat up straighter. That what happened, she said. That I need your help, I said. That she blinked. My help? I thought we were enemies. I thought so too, I said. But I was wrong. We are not enemies. We are prisoners, both of us, in the same cage. And the cage is about to collapse. I told her about the investigation. I told her about my father's message. I told her what would happen to us if Xie Cong fell. Her face went pale. If he falls, I will be nothing, she said. A concubine of a disgraced official. My child will be nothing. We will be cast out, left to sta Irv. Exactly, I said. So we need to act. We need to protect ourselves. She sta read at me. How? I told her my plan. The plan was simple. Xie Cong had been using his position at the Ministry of War to line his own pockets. He had accepted bribes from merchants, diverted funds meant for the soldiers, hidden his wealth in accounts across the city. If the Ministry of Rights found proof of this, he would be arrested, tried, and executed. But if the proof disappeared, if the evidence was destroyed before anyone could find it, he would be safe. And so would we. Yinchuang frowned. How do we destroy the evidence? We don't have access to his private papers. I do, I said. He has been trusting me more and more. He leaves his desk unlocked when I am in his study. I can find the papers and take them. She shook her head. He will notice they are missing. He will, I agreed. But by the time he notices, the papers will be destroyed. And he will not dare to accuse me, because to accuse me would be to admit that he was hiding something. Yinchuang sta read at me. You have thought about this a lot. I have, I said. I have thought about everything. That is how I have survived this long. She was silent for a moment. Then she nodded. I will help you, she said. But I need something in return. What? When this is over, she said, I want my freedom. I want to leave this house, with my child, and never come back. I want to start over somewhere else, somewhere I can be something other than a concubine. I thought about it. She was asking for the one thing I could give her. I had enough money, enough connections, to set her up in a new life. I could give her the freedom she had never had. Done, I said. When this is over, I will help you leave. I will give you enough silver to start a new life. You can go wherever you want, be whoever you want. She looked at me. For the first time, I saw something like hope in her eyes. You mean it? I mean it, I said. We are not enemies, Yinchuang. We were never enemies. We were just 2 women trying to survive a world that does not want us to. She nodded. And for the first time, she smiled a real smile. That night, I went to Xie Cong's study. He was not there. He had gone to a banquet in the city, celebrating some minor victory at the ministry. I had made sure of that. I had suggested that he attend, had encouraged him to make an appearance, to show his face and remind everyone of his important stuff. He had listened. He always listened. Now that I slipped into the study and closed the door behind me. The room was dim, lit only by the dying embers of the fire. I moved quickly to his desk, to the compartment I knew he had hidden beneath a false bottom. I found the papers easily. They were all there, the letters from merchants, the receipts for bribes, the copies of the funds he had siphoned from the Melita Re budget. I gathered them all up, shoved them into my sleeve, and left that I was out of the study before the fire had fully died. That I walked to the Xie den, to the frozen koi pond, and I threw the papers into the ice. They would be found in the spring, when the ice melted, but by then, they would be so waterlogged and illegible that no one would ever be able to read them. The evidence was gone. Xie Cong was safe. But I was not done. That I walked to the main gate and met the courier I had hired earlier that day. I gave him a sealed letter and a pouch of silver. Take this to the Ministry of Rights, I said. Make sure it reaches the chief investigator personally. The courier nodded and Desape read into the night that the letter was a warning. It told the Ministry of Rights that the evidence they were looking for was gone, destroyed by Xie Cong himself. It warned them that if they pursued the investigation, they would find nothing but empty files and dead ends. It would buy us time. Time to prepare, time to escape. That I walked back to my chambers. The house was quiet. Inshuang was asleep in her room, dreaming of her freedom. Xie Cong was at the banquet, oblivious to what I had done. That I stood at my window and looked out at the winter night. The moon was full and bright, casting silver light on the frozen Xie dens. The war was not over. It would never be over, not really. There would always be new battles, new enemies, new obstacles. But for tonight, I had won. That I had taken my future into my own hands. I had protected myself and the people who depended on me. I had refused to be a victim. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. That I went to bed and slept deeply, without dreams. And in the morning, when I woke, I was ready for whatever came next. To our readers, the end is in sight. The investigation is averted, the evidence is destroyed, and our madam has proven herself to be a force to be reckoned with. But there are still secrets to be uncovered and choices to be made. If you have come this far with us, please leave a review and add this story to your library. The final chapter is coming soon. See you there.